Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of On the Blood Trail. It's been a little while since the last podcast, and some other stuff was supposed to be happening kind of in between then and now that hasn't really happened, and well, kind of did anyway. Um, but first and foremost, on today's podcast, we got a guest. My brother Ryan is joining us today. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, how's it going, Tyler? Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's cool. We've been talking about doing this for a little while, and it just hasn't happened, but had a chance to make it go today. So some of the stuff that was supposed to happen between the last podcast and now was the Alabama hunt, which I was pretty disappointed because they decided to change a whole bunch of the travel rules with the nonsense that we're living in right now, and it just didn't make sense for me to go and partake in this hunt. And Spencer still decided to go and make a trip out of it. You got to go still, and Dad decided to join you. So just quickly, what did you think of the hunt?
To be honest, I didn't really know what to expect going into it, but it turned out to be a good hunt. But I think the only reason it turned out to be such a good hunt was because of the effort that we put forth. You know, when we got into the stand on the first morning, we were out of position on the deer. Definitely bow hunting was completely out of the question at that point, and we had to grind it out. We when we finally spotted some deer on that first morning, we moved our stands. We spent hours, sometimes every day on that trip, relocating and scouting out where we were supposed to be. And I know it's the outfitter's job, but in this case, the outfitter didn't really put us on top of the deer. He put us kind of close to the deer, and we had to put ourselves on top of them, unfortunately.
And you didn't really get a whole lot of chances on big deer there, did you?
Man, it's hard to say if I were to try to count offhand how many deer I actually could have killed on that entire trip. We were both given a permit to shoot one buck and one doe on that hunting lease. Now, the way it works in Alabama is that the leaseholder can make their own set of regulations as far as like hunting regulations go. So in Alabama, I can't remember how many bucks and does it is. It's a lot. You can shoot tons of bucks and does on your hunting license. But when you're on a specific lease, they can limit you to what you can shoot. So in this case, we were limited to one buck and one doe. And in that entire trip, I'd be shocked if I got a shot more than two or three does and more than two bucks.
Yeah, so that makes made it so that the buck that you did end up shooting, you wanted to make sure that you took advantage of the chance, eh?
Well, of course. And what had happened was I was bow hunting. I mean, you go down there with the intent to bow hunt and you have your bow in hand and you want to hang in there as hard and as long as you can. But when you get put into a situation like we were in, we're down in this real thick kind of hardwood slash planted pine bottom. And it's thick down there. I mean, it's not as thick as Alberta, but I mean, it's thick enough that 50 to 75 yards, you lose all sight and you wouldn't know if anything was there. You might catch a glimpse at 75 through the right angle in the trees, but I mean, it's pretty rare. And this bucket, I caught a glimpse at him about 60 yards, kind of cruising. He was coming pretty much straight at us. And he just kind of, there was a bit of a wash or a drain kind of coming down the valley between us and him. And he went the low road. And I'm thinking it was more so for the cover aspect of it because it was a lot more open kind of pine where we were. And as he went down, it was kind of more of a willow bottom. And I had come to full draw with my bow and I had had a previous experience while mule deer hunting with you in November
Hmm.
that I wasn't able to get my anchor point quite where I wanted it. My shot was way out to lunch. And I encountered the kind of a similar situation here and I couldn't get my anchor point. And I only had about 3 seconds to shoot. But because I couldn't find my anchor point, I wasn't going to let the arrow go unethically since I had already experienced what that was like when I couldn't, quite connect with my anchor point and get comfortable with my shot. I'm confident with my shooting abilities and especially on target. But I was into a situation where you're playing odds that are not in your favor. We had come from an Arizona hunt where it was quite warm, so we were quite climatized to the warm. A lot of sun, quite a lot hotter of an atmosphere. And I was thrown into this situation in Alabama where it was 32 degrees Fahrenheit, zero, degrees Celsius, and there was quite a wind chill. So we were bundled up pretty tight. And when that buck came in, I couldn't get my anchor point, and because of the previous experience, I let down my bow and Dad was behind the camera and he just said, we don't want to let this buck escape because this was day two, and we only have 6 days. We knew the weather was going to get poor on day 5 and 6. Pretty heavy, cold rain fronts were coming in, and that was going to suppress the deer movement. And so I grabbed the. We had borrowed the guide's gun. It was a 300 Winchester short mag. I'm not sure what bullets were coming out of it, but because of the ammo shortage in the United States, we actually only had, I think it was 4 bullets. He gave us 4 bullets, and I think they were all different caliber, like all different grainages. And so we were trying to make every shot count. And this buck he went from about 30 yards, kind of going on a 45 away from us, went down into the river bottom, probably about a 60-foot drop in elevation difference from us. And then you could add the 25 feet we're up in the trees. So this deer, he's quite a ways down there, as far as the eye perspective goes. And I just put the crosshairs on him. I stopped him. He said, "Yeah, I'm on him." And, I let the shot go, and it was a good shot. It was a little bit low, but I think given that I was in a tree stand, that's just kind of where, I've always found when you find that spot where you're comfortable and you're like, yeah, this is where I'm going to make it happen. You just pull the trigger on that spot. And it was a low shot. It took his heart out and most of his lungs, but he made it probably 80 to 100 yards across the creek, and he instantly went down. So, I mean, it was a great hunt, but the challenge of it was really that in that day, on day two, is when we harvested both of our bucks. And those were the only 2 deer we saw in that entire day. And if you weren't scouring the bush and really paying attention and staying focused, and, like there's, you know, in today's world, it's pretty easy to jump on your phone when you're in the tree stand, but that wasn't an option. It's so thick. And I remember when I spotted Dad's buck, man, he was in the nastiest, thickest junk. And it was just a miracle that I even spotted him, really, because the way my tree stand was sit, I had to look over my shoulder and down the hill. And it was a tough hunt. As much as people want to believe when they see all the great quality footage and all these deer on these edited hunts that we do, it's not always the reality of the hunt. Lots of times that's just the best of what happened. It's not necessarily how it all happened.
Yeah, it's a lot of just making sure that you can make it count and make your own opportunities a lot of the time too. And Dad shot a dandy of a buck, and I'm excited to sit down and talk with you guys both about the full experience of Alabama. Um, Now you touched on just coming from Arizona, and I got to sit with you on your Coos deer hunt and watch you harvest your first Coos buck. It was a fun hunt, and I'm sure we could do a whole podcast just talking about that.
Yeah.
But just quickly, what did you think of that? I know I did my my last podcast was talking about my Coos deer and my experience with it, and I loved it. But what did you think?
Man, I can't tell if it's the persona that everybody carries behind Coos deer hunting or whether or not it's the Coos deer themselves that get you so rattled. But I've never been in a hunting situation where such, I guess a stature wise, such a small animal gets you so hyped up. It's really incredible. When you come to full draw on a Coos deer, you get really amped up, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. It's weird because people hype up different things, like the Alaskan Yukon moose, and I've been on an Alaskan Yukon moose hunt. Shot a huge bull, um, and it's a lot of hype, and it's a fun hunt. It's just I don't know. I sometimes I feel like I had more fun hunting moose in Alberta for out of the same time frame. You see more. It might not be the same quality of animals, but it seems like with Coos deer, they actually live up to the hype that everybody throws at them. So I really enjoyed that part of it.
I gotta agree with you, given that I've only ever been able to hunt in the Yukon once. And it was the first morning deal. It was pretty much the first moose we seen. And I was able to harvest him. He was a beautiful bull. He was 52 inches wide, but in that situation, if you were to put that on YouTube, it really was as easy as it looked.
Yeah.
Other than the fact of getting to the Yukon and doing the 12-hour quad ride, which we did into the backcountry, which was really difficult to get those ATVs into the backcountry given the terrain. But other than that, it was really quite an easy hunt. Now, I'm not sure if that's just because the moose don't get hunted very much, which I'm pretty sure it probably is. But it just doesn't give you that amped up experience quite like when a Coues deer is coming in. That's even given that we were sitting on a watering hole seeing 200 headed deer in a day. But when that one buck came in, man, it didn't matter if I was behind the camera or if I was behind my bow. I was rattled every time.
Oh, you're on pins and needles. From the time you see them to the time they go out of your sight line, whether it was a miss, a kill, just them leaving, you didn't want to move. Even with the does, you get a group of does come in and you don't want to move. You don't want to give yourself away. It's just a very pins and needles type situation where you never know what's going to happen in that time frame.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, a little story, not to give away too much while we were in Arizona there. This was just after you had left and gone back to Alberta, but it was me and dad. We were still sitting on the water hole, and we were moving our blind because the wind direction was really, it was kind of a strange thing because we were beside a mountain, but we were still quite a ways away into a valley that you would figure that you wouldn't really get thermals coming off the mountain like you would expect, whether or not you were in like an actual mountain range. But for whatever reason, we had mountain thermals, and it was really playing with our wind direction. So we were moving our blind around a little bit, and it is hard to get brush to build up a blind in Arizona. It is really difficult. Everything's prickly. You don't want to cut down much. And so we're trying to, break off dead branches, and there's nothing green for filler. And we're trying to dig dirt as like berms. And we were making this blind kind of up this wash, probably 50 yards from where the blind setup was where you harvested your deer. And
Hmm.
I was kind of at the front of the blind trying to, push in some dirt and fill in some of the gaps between the sticks. And all of a sudden, dad's like, "Oh, don't move. There's a deer coming in right behind you." So I just laid down on the ground, and I had a coos doe and fawn walk. I don't know. They couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 yards from me. I
Hmm.
was just laying there like a log, and obviously my camouflage was doing its job because they never spooked, and they actually went all the way to water. They watered and went all the way back while there was a human being laying like 8 yards from them, and that's really quite something when you start to think about how jumpy those coos deer really are.
Yeah, no, it's really funny. Like even the buck that I shot, we're just sitting there, and some deer made their way into the watering hole, did their thing, and then left. And then I look over towards Mark, who's to my right, and there's two bucks walking right. They were going to walk right into us. Like they
Yeah.
were going to be right in front of our blind. You probably could have picked a fly off their bum. And Mark didn't even know they were coming. He was looking the other direction. And then by the time they realized that he was there, they turned around and ran off. And my buck, which was in the back,
Hmm.
only ran off because the first one did, which was good because the first one, being all thirsty, decided to come all the way back around and still come into the watering hole and ended up getting a shot off. So it's crazy how they just pop up out of nowhere. Because like when we'd be walking around there, even looking for your buck when we were blood trailing, and you get out on those big open flats, you just think you'd be able to see them everywhere because we
I
see
know.
so many deer in a day, and then you just that you can't see anything. It's incredible where they can hide.
I know, and I even attempted to do a little bit of still hunting with dad to fill his tag. We were just no luck whatsoever. You could sneak up on a dead coos deer if you wanted to.
Yeah, I know. So for today, getting off of topic and onto the actual topic, we're going to talk a little bit about bear hunting. Uh, just been watching some of our old hunts that are on the channel, editing some new stuff for the channel. It's a lot of reminiscing, a lot of getting amped up, getting the itch to go bear hunting. Um, are you as excited about it as I am?
Yeah, it's something that you kind of anticipate every year. This, I don't know whether or not this feels like a longer draw between, your November hunting season until about now in Alberta, or whether or not it goes from June until August. But I feel like this is the longest drought. You're in these, kind of, I don't know exactly how to put it, these down cold winter months. And you can't wait to not, first of all, just feel the warmth of spring, but to
Hmm.
be able to get out there and get back and enjoy the outdoors.
You hear the buzz of the mosquitoes.
Oh man, it's not too bad for usually the first 2 weeks of May, but that's when the bear hunting is tough. And boy, once the bear hunting gets good, the mosquitoes get something bad, don't they?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that when the mosquitoes get bad, it's time to get out in the woods,
Hmm.
which sounds kind of backwards, but I know last year on our hunt that the mosquitoes were terrible. I was amazed that we managed to put up with what we did for the time that we were out there.
It just was a miracle that bug spray works as good as it does because I'm pretty sure we were dousing ourselves 10 times more than I'd ever put cologne on. That's for sure.
Yeah, we were pretty shiny looking.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand when we were doing those stocks, if our wind wasn't perfect, those stocks were completely butchered.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know, and
I know.
that's given that, not every stock was perfect.
No, a lot of them were bad. Man, we seen how many bears did we say we saw in the 3 days? 80 or something? It was a lot of bears.
We had guessed we'd seen, I think it was well over 60 plus different encounters.
Yeah, absolutely. And people would be like, "Well, how could you tell?" And when we were out there, we knew because we're spending all day every day out there, and we knew what areas we saw bears. There's a lot of times where we saw bears. We're like, you know what, we saw that one earlier, whether it
Hmm.
was a sow with cubs or just. I remember that one bear that had 3 legs.
Hmm.
Yeah, we knew
Can't
which
forget
bear
that
that
one.
was every time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, it was a fun hunt. But this year, um, what are the plans for this year? I'd love to go back up there and spot and stalk more bears if we get the chance during the rut. That's phenomenal. But then we're also going to maybe try doing some baiting.
Yeah, for sure. So generally when you're trying to videotape spot and stock, it isn't a super hard thing to achieve with a bow, but it definitely presents a lot more of a challenge than when you go into a baiting situation. So this year we're going to try and run a few baits and see if we can't run some success doing that.
So out of the two methods, what do you prefer?
Personally, I get more amped up on a spot and stock experience. A lot of people, want to discredit you guys, for whether or not you guys are driving or quadding. When you spot the bear, then you get out and then you make your stock. But
Hmm.
in Alberta, you don't really get a lot of choice given how thick the bush is, and that's given where you spot your bear. Sometimes there could be a beautiful green 20-yard wide hot line or cut line, 50 yards away from that bear, but he might be on the ditch, on that logging road. And when he is, you don't generally look a gift horse in the mouth. You take your opportunity when you get it. And that's why lots of times when we encounter a bear, we end up having to do it from a road.
Yeah, no, and that's completely fair. And then by the legal definition, the roads that we hunt on are they're not actually roads. They're old logging roads, lease roads from oil companies. They're not maintained. If they are, it's by the logging or oil companies.
Hmm.
Um, and so that people think that you're hunting on these busy highways. I mean, where we were last year, we saw maybe two vehicles the entire time we were there, and they were workers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, oh, well, you're shooting, whether or not they say that you're shooting down the road or whatever, but we always know what's in our surroundings. Always.
Absolutely.
You never go to take a shot without knowing what your backdrop is ever. It doesn't matter if
Mhm.
you're, hunting a cut block, a lease road, whether or not you're hunting a farmer's field, you always got to know what your backdrop is. And that doesn't change for us no matter what the situation.
Well, and there's that saying that a camera doesn't ever do terrain justice. And another part of that, when you're in filming your hunts, the camera angle doesn't exactly show everything that's around you. Like the hunter's angle is always different than the cameraman's angle. Uh, you you guys prove that even more with the Alabama hunt because
Hmm.
the hunter would get a good shot angle, but the cameraman isn't entirely on the deer. And it's the same
Hmm.
thing with every animal that we hunt. And so a person doesn't realize that just because you can only see so much with the camera doesn't mean that the hunter isn't aware of the complete surroundings.
Yeah. And if a lot of people seem to not understand is that the camera's almost never over top of the hunter or the shooter's shoulder. Almost never.
Mhm.
Like it's just not really realistic in a lot of hunting situations. And that's exactly what you're getting at.
Yep, 100%. And so between baiting and spot and stock, I would say that we've probably taken more bears on spot and stock hunts just
Hmm.
because we've done that more. But even like baiting, I've only killed one bear over a bait. We've done it a lot more than just that one hunt. But I've only found success the one time, a little bit because we were being picky. But you shot a huge bear over a bait once.
Yeah, I did, and unfortunately, I don't believe we got good enough camera footage to be able to show that on Slager Outdoors. But it was an incredible hunt, and that bear he did rattle me something fierce. He was a big boar, He come lumbering in, and I can't really explain what happened. You know, just got a little bit too amped up, and I missed the bear. I did pretty much like right under the tree, and I didn't compensate for the angle. And what had happened was that bear, he knew that we were in the area and he was kind of trying to look for us. And I think that's what rattled me more than anything. And he went straight to the base of our tree, and I shot basically leaning over my platform of my tree stand to try and shoot down at the bear. I didn't miss him by much. I mean, I probably took hair off the side of his body, but he kind of ran off, into the brush and circled around. And about 15 minutes later, he came back out, and I was able to get him with a open sights lever action 30-30.
Lever action, wasn't it a bolt action?
Yeah, actually, I think yeah that would be
Spencer's grandpa's gun, wasn't it?
yeah, exactly. That's exactly
That's
what
right.
it was. Yeah, I can't
That's
remember when he told me that he got that gun, but I think it was somewhere in the 1930s.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. I just remember that because I was thinking of 30-30. That's not lever action. That was weird. But now looking into the bear hunting persona, everybody has these misconceptions about bear hunting, and I think it's mostly people that just don't like bear hunting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like people say that baiting is easy or it's unfair. Now, a lot of people bait deer. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
very popular. We grew up in Alberta and still live in Alberta, where it's illegal to bait deer. Um, so for us, it was kind of a surprise to realize that so many people did in different states or provinces. And with bears, like you can bait bears here. We didn't do it a whole lot, like we just said. Um, Now it is easy if you want to shoot a bear, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's a huge challenge to shoot any single bear over a bait. Now, a big one, it's a huge challenge.
And given that I think all those factors still apply to whitetail deer in Saskatchewan. If you want to shoot a
Yep,
deer over a bait, it's not difficult.
100%. And
If you want to
I
shoot
was
a big
listening.
deer,
Yeah,
you
and I
know.
was listening to another podcast the other day, and they made a good point that um, majority of hunting is strategic luck.
Mm-hmm.
Like where an animal's frequenting, you don't really know 100% if they're going to come by when you're there, but you try to plant yourself in the right spot for that right time. Like in Saskatchewan, I shot my biggest buck ever, and we only had pictures of him in the dark. First morning we sat there, he came out at like 9 in the morning, right? And if you're not there, you miss it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are there, you capitalize. And with bears, a lot of that's the same thing. We got this one big bear up where we're baiting, and we're trying to get him. And every year, this bear comes in once in the daylight. And if you're not there, you'll never see him again because he disappears and only comes in the dark from then on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not easy. It's like if you come home and there's just like a pizza sitting on your counter, and you're like, okay, I didn't put that there. Wonder how that got there. You're hungry, and you might go check it out. You might open the box, but it might take you a little bit before you take a bite.
Mm-hmm.
And
I know
with
what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. But if a little kid comes in and sees pizza sitting on the counter, he's gonna go right to it.
Yeah, he's not even gonna ask a
Right? It's
question.
the same thing with bears, the same thing with deer and all these other animals. And so this idea that baiting is unfair, like the big reason that people do it is so that you can get a closer shot. And for people like us, it's so that you can get good footage, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we're relying on getting good footage, and a person doesn't realize how difficult it is to actually get good kills on camera.
Yeah, it takes a kind of all the stars to align. I mean, when we're hunting, every hunt that we have on YouTube,
Mhm.
all the stars had to align to a certain degree. Every stock that works out, every shot placement that works out, everything, there's always a star that has to align for everything.
Absolutely. Like, um, we got that one hunt from last spring on the Slager Outdoors YouTube channel, and we were spot and stalking. We get so much criticism about the road thing, but like we just said, that they're not actually roads. They're just ways for people to get access points for oil leases and logging points and all that stuff. But just because we showed us walking up the road on a bear, like that bear that you shot, that entire situation was mind blowing. The entire time that we were walking up on that bear, I was like, man, I don't think this is going to work. And he
Yeah,
just
it
didn't pay any attention to us. He was so distracted by that sow that we were able to walk right down the middle of that road where it was nice and quiet. He couldn't hear us. The wind was in our face, which was a first because where we were hunting there, it was either perfect or completely wrong, and we got
Mhm.
close enough to get you to get a shot off with your bow.
Yeah, I mean, don't a lot of people wouldn't understand that that was probably stock number 30 or 40 at that point in the hunt.
Absolutely.
Like we had stalked and stalked and stalked, and that was by far the best situation we had. And it was given that it was the biggest bear that we actually seen that entire trip. It just all the stars aligned. And I mean, my reaction after I had harvested that bear, it was true because I was in such awe of the fact that that stock even worked out. I didn't, the whole time I went up the road too, I couldn't believe that it was actually working. I'm like, there's no way. Like you can even hear me on the video say, we don't have anything here that can shoot 125 yards. We had
Yeah.
an open sights 30-30, and we had my compound bow. And that bear was big enough, I would have shot him with something that could reach out to 125 yards. But at that point, you know, it just that went to show that in that situation, I was getting ready to compromise because I didn't think it was going to work.
Yeah, exactly. And we love our bow hunting, but when it comes down to it, it's get it done, right?
Yeah, when it's a do or die situation, I'm not going to die.
No, exactly. And um, yeah, I just even just reliving that hunt, I can remember that bear comes out on the road and starts following the sow the opposite direction, and that was upwind of us,
Hmm.
and it just we just walked, followed it all the way down the road. We walked what, a mile, following these
Well,
bears down the road.
it had to be. And I remember when he came out of the bush and I looked at you and I'm like, what are we gonna do? Like the situation was so unusual to what we had usually encountered stalking those bears. And I was like, man, what are we gonna do? And the whole time I was thinking, if they step off the road and into the trees, it's over.
Yeah, because then they're gone.
Yeah, because you can't chase those bears in those trees. We tried a few times on that hunt,
Yep.
to try and follow bears into the woods and see if we could get close to them. Every time we either spooked them or we never found them.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just it's too thick.
Yeah, it was one of those situations, and like we do it enough that, and when you hunt bears enough and spot and stalk them enough, like we do, you're good at it, right? And that's not us
Mhm.
being on our high horse. Like we put in an honest effort. There was a few stalks that we showed where we got right up on the bears and didn't take a shot because maybe uh, the bear wasn't big enough. There was a couple times where the bears were rubbed really bad, and we just didn't want to shoot that bear.
Mhm.
There was that one that we walked up to, uh, that I had my bow and we got right up to 30 yards. Sometimes I wish I would have shot that bear. But it's so hard to judge them sometimes. Whereas like your bear comes out, we're like, yeah, no, that one's a really good bear. And I think we're gonna definitely take a chance at shooting this one, right?
It also helped that we had a sow to judge the size of him off of.
Yeah, big time. And she wasn't a small sow.
No, she was a good sized sow, and because my bear was with her, it was easy to be able to judge body size to body size. And the bear that we had stocked up on you, for you with your bow, it's tough when you don't really necessarily have a bait barrel there to be able to compare the size of the body to, or something, like another bear. Like we just didn't have anything to be able to judge the size of the body off of it. And you could tell how much bug spray we were wearing because as soon as the wind switched, man, that bear was like, what is that?
It didn't even look at us.
No, it kind of half cocked its head towards us and it was gone.
Yeah, it caught a whiff of us and it decided that that was not the place to be anymore.
Hmm.
And yeah, no, we stalk so much, and that's just the thing. Like spot and stalk isn't easy either. There's so many chances. Like we saw over 60 bears. We only killed two. We only had
Hmm.
successful stalks on maybe six,
Yep.
right? So it's not like it's super easy. We had chances and we had situations where it just didn't work out. And so for people to think that it's just super easy to do that or super easy to hunt over a bait, I honestly think that it's just people that don't like to hunt bears or don't like bear hunting in general. Um, but then there's also people that run them with dogs, which is illegal here and
Hmm.
it's illegal in a lot of places. And I don't know about you, but like for me personally, I'd probably give it a try. We've done it on mountain lions, so I don't see why hunting bears with dogs would be much different. Not that I would do it all the time, but I would definitely come along on a hunt or partake in one.
Well, hunting with hounds is a really unique experience, and a lot of it, the credit goes to the houndsman and the hounds.
Yep.
Doesn't necessarily go to the hunter, but that doesn't take anything out of the hunting experience.
No, absolutely it doesn't. Just because it's in a tree when you get there, or cornered, or however the situation is, it doesn't mean that there wasn't a lot of effort or work that went into getting to that point.
And sometimes, it'll take a dog that has 10, 15 years of experience.
Yep.
You know,
No,
like
exactly.
that that 10 or 15 years, that's not an overnight thing. A lot of people don't, just because it looks easy on the video, it doesn't mean it was ever that easy for us.
No, exactly, and like with the cougar hunting, a lot of our cat hunts are pretty old, and back then everything was filmed and edited in such a way that people just want to see the kill, right? They just want to see you get to the kill and get to the animal wherever it is, and then shoot it, and then recover it and talk about it. Nowadays, everybody wants to see you stub your toe or twist your ankle on the way up the hill, see you panting and sweating, and all the difficulty that's going into this because they want a more real experience instead of just the rush and the thrill.
Hmm. Storyline.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I want to dive into your first bear hunt. Now, you've been on a few different bear hunts. I know growing up, when I got into going hunting, you were tagging along all the time. You got to watch my first bear kill. You got to
Hmm.
watch me miss the first bear, which was probably just nerves. I don't even, 12 years old, or I guess I was 13. I don't even remember what caused me to miss. But then you also got to see, I remember that big bear that dad shot in the cut block when we were moose hunting.
Hmm.
That was pretty cool. Uh, and then you got to the age where you could hunt, and we went after bears. And what was it like to shoot your first bear?
You know, bear hunting was so different compared to all the hunting that we had done for deer, and and the spot and stalk aspect of bear hunting, it made it it makes it a really big thrill for young new hunters.
Yeah,
I think it just the way that it impacts you, the ability to spot and stalk an animal. Like, because with whitetail deer, I mean, you can do it and it has to be a perfect situation, but it's just not like bear hunting.
it's more
Bears,
interactive.
yeah, bears give you an
Yeah.
opportunity to interact with them a lot more, especially even on baits. Even if your presence is known on occasion, sometimes bears are okay with it. There's never been a time when a whitetail deer was okay with the human presence.
No, never.
And so when I was able to harvest my first bear, just previous before I had actually shot that bear, previous that night, we were going through a cut block, and there was a colored bear that was in it, and dad ended up shooting it and harvesting it. But I had lined up on that bear and I was going to be the shooter, and I was just too rattled. The bear was probably, low 200s as far as yardage, somewhere in that 225 range.
Hmm.
And I just was not steady enough to be able to harvest that bear. And I've never passed up a lot of shots in my hunting career, but that was one of the ones that I did pass up. And generally, whenever I feel like ethics is a huge question in the shot, I usually at that point, put the gun down or give the gun to someone else, because it's not worth wounding the animal. Never is.
No, absolutely. You want to make sure that you're taking as good of a shot and doing your job as the hunter or harvester to make a clean, ethical kill. And you don't want to put the animal through any sort of pain. And like it's- in hunting, you're going to run into misses, you're going to run into bad shots. If you do it long enough and you make enough shots on animals, that kind of stuff does happen. But it was a good thing that you passed off the gun, and dad ended up shooting that bear. And it was the first of a triple header that night where him, yourself, and me all shot bears. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. It was a pretty intense evening. That's back in that country before it was all logged out, and a lot of the bears were still in the bush there. And man, it was pretty much everywhere we turned there was bears.
Yeah, it was an awesome experience. I remember it's like every corner you went around, there was another bear. And like
Hmm.
we still go back to that area, and it's getting better since they wiped out all the trees. It's still not quite where it used to be. Our new spot that we go to now is a lot like that place used to be,
Hmm.
which is awesome. And that's why we put in the effort and the time in that spot. But getting into baiting will be a lot of fun this year. I'm excited to get into setting up some of the baits, and then sitting there and hopefully getting some bow kills on camera. That would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Spot and stock's a lot of fun. It's difficult to get a bear with a bow on a spot and stock, especially one of a good size.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of factors that go into a spot and stock hunt, even on a bait hunt. Hunting is hunting, and it's called hunting for a reason. It's not called killing. And
No,
it doesn't
it's not.
matter what situation you're in or what, type of hunting you're doing. There's always a challenge for everything.
Yep, there is.
So with baiting, I find a lot of the challenges is setting up the bait and maintaining it. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and setting up a stand that's in a good enough vantage point where you're not going to have to worry about wind, distance, objects or trees or limbs in your way. There's a
Hmm.
lot of factors that go into it.
But as far as it goes, I have a lot of fun bear hunting, and I'm gonna do it every year in my life. And lots of the time you're doing it also for population control because there is a lot of black bears in the province of Alberta, and if you go to the right place, they're way outnumbered than what they should be.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that there's not really that many, but most of the people hunting bears don't really like to go very far to find them. So you
No.
go in these close areas where everybody's going because they're easily accessible, and then you don't find as many bears. You don't find big bears because everybody's shooting the first one that looks huge. It's no different than deer or any other animal. They see one, they're like, "Oh, it's a giant," and they shoot. And they're like, "Oh, well, it wasn't as big as I thought." And then you get enough people doing that, and there's a lot of smaller animals in that population. But if you go a little bit further and you put in a little more effort and time, you can actually find find animals that are of a better quality.
Yeah, and touching on a subject about population control as well is a lot of the cougar hunting that we did was all kind of in the same region in Alberta, and in that region at that time, the deer numbers were really, really low.
Yeah, they were bad.
Yeah, they were really hurting, and that was because of the absolute outrageous number of mountain lions that were in that area. And since the mountain lions have been thinned out in that area a little bit more, and their population is doing a lot better because there is more deer to be able to hunt for them. But the deer population has really rebounded in that area. I've heard from multiple people that the deer population is great, and the hunting's gone way better for anyone who's looking to hunt deer. And the mountain lion population is still doing really well.
Well, and the bears are taking out fawns in the spring, and moose calves is a huge one.
Hmm.
We've seen it time and time again where we're out hunting bears in the spring, and you come across a cow moose that is pregnant and she's sweating and distressed and standing in the middle of a road like they shouldn't be. And that's typically because there's a bear on her tail pressuring her to the point where she's uncomfortable, aborts the calf, and then the bear eats the calf and the moose moves on with its life.
Hmm.
And the other part of it too, like where we're cougar hunting, there's bears there, there's wolves there, there's coyotes there. Like there's a lot of pressure on the grass eaters that people don't realize you really do need to do a number on the predators.
Yeah, and it doesn't just go for cougars; it goes for wolves and bears in that area as well. And a lot of people, just because it's not on our channel, just doesn't mean that we're just picking on the mountain lions.
Oh, exactly. And just because we put out 6 or 8 hunts in a row that are mountain lions doesn't mean that all we're doing is going out there hunting mountain lions, you know?
Yeah, and I mean that can be over a 5 or 10 year period of time.
Exactly. And then something cool that we're gonna try and do this year is doing some live videos from the bear stand if the cell phone service permits, I guess.
Hmm.
And then people can watch some bear activity live on the bait, maybe even a kill if we get lucky enough, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah, I know it'll be a lot of fun. And I think there's a lot to look forward to. It seems like it was going to be in early spring, but now all of a sudden we got all this nasty weather, so who knows what's going to happen. But we're going to make the most of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. No, it'll be a good time.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for sitting down and doing this podcast. It's not too terribly long. I think it'll be a good one for people who have a shorter attention span. Um, but to those listening, go check out the Slager Outdoors channel. We got a couple bear hunts. We got one from 2 years ago where Spencer shot his biggest bear and I shot my biggest bear. And that one's doing pretty good on there. It was a phenomenal hunt. We actually filmed it with our cell phones, of all things. I don't know who came up with that idea.
Oh man, I want to say it was probably Spencer.
Yeah, it might have been. He comes up with some of those ideas. It's pretty fun. I'm
Mhm.
glad that we decided to do that because it was an awesome hunt, and we had some pretty cool close encounters on that one.
Yeah, we did.
And then we got the hunt that we were talking about from last year, where I shot my first and so far only bear with a muzzleloader. You shot that awesome boar with a bow. That was such a cool
Hmm.
stalk and an awesome hunt. Then we got, man, I got my bear from my first bear and only bear so far with a bow. That one was over a bait.
Hmm.
There's a bear hunt from dad over the bait. Just some really good hunts on there. And we got more that are slated to come out. So you want to make sure you check out Slager Outdoors on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description for this video for that. And then, yeah, lots of good stuff coming out.
Yeah,
Lots
no,
of,
we're pretty excited with being able to put out some new content and show everybody our adventures in the bush.
yeah, it's been a good break, but it's also exciting to get back into it. It's fun to look back at the video footage. A person doesn't realize how much they missed that part of it.
Yeah, I've always found it interesting with hunting. I can be in a situation where it could be cold and I could be soaking wet from getting rained on all day, and you could sit all day is bored out of your mind. And the moment you get out of that tree, the first thing you want to do is get back in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny too, because even you remember that where dad's tub trailer on the quad fell apart.
Yeah, I
And I was
remember.
hiding behind the camera on that hunt, or not even, it wasn't even a hunt. We were just going to rebait. I think we maybe were going to hunt, but the bait was like, it wasn't even barely hit. I think maybe one bear had come by, and he was so mad when that trailer fell apart, and you couldn't even tell on camera. And I was like, man, I want to hide behind this camera and just capture all this on film so that I don't have to deal with him being grumpy. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, yeah. That's another thing. When you're in front of the camera, it's a whole different limelight.
Absolutely, it's a lot of pressure.
There's absolutely nothing that you do in front of that camera that won't be, it's all captured.
Yeah,
Every mistake you make, every bad decision that you make when you're in the woods, it's caught on camera, and it sometimes can make us look really stupid.
yeah, it can, or it makes you look awesome. And then if you edit it in a certain way, some people look like they're superstars. But we like to make it as real and legit as possible, and bring it kind of just as it is, you know.
Yeah, 100%.
Right on. Well, you can follow me at On the Blood Trail on Instagram, Facebook. Um, oh, and the Go Wild app. I got to get you on that. It's a pretty cool app. It's just hunters, hunting, fishing, everything hunting related. It's a lot of fun. Uh, and yeah, so at On the Blood Trail, it's on Go Wild app, Instagram, Facebook. Slager Outdoors is at Slager Outdoors on Instagram and Facebook. Doing YouTube lives about every Tuesday, I think, is the goal. If it works out to be that way, so you want to make sure you're catching on those. And yeah, you got anything else to add?
No, I think that's about it. Appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for thanks for being a part of it, and thanks to everybody for listening.
Yeah, sounds good. Talk to you later.
Yeah, till next time.